Hollywood's golden age was anything but squeaky clean. Behind the velvet curtains and silver screen smiles, the 1940s delivered some of the most scandalous, debated, and downright explosive movies ever made. These weren't just films. They were lightning rods for censors, church groups, and the self-appointed moral police. So, how far did classic Hollywood dare to go when everyone was watching? Brace yourself, because these 15 films pushed every button, broke every rule, and left a trail of controversy that still crackles today. Ready to see what set the world on fire? The Outlaw, 1943. If you thought the 1940s played it safe, you've never heard of The Outlaw. Produced by the ultimate Hollywood wildcard, Howard Hughes, this Western was less about cowboys and more about curves, specifically Jane Russell's. Hughes engineered a special bra for Russell, determined to make her bust a box office sensation. What followed was a media circus that would make today's tabloid scandals look tame. The Hays Office, the so-called moral watchdogs of Hollywood, went ballistic, demanding edits, delays, and even outright bans for what they called excessive and lustful display. But Hughes was never a man to back down from a fight. He famously waged a marketing war, teasing the censors and public alike with risque posters and double entendre taglines. How'd you like to tussle with Russell? The publicity stunt worked. Crowds lined up not for plot, but for the promise of forbidden flesh. Some theaters refused to show the movie. Others packed in audiences with a "see it before it's banned" pitch. The more the censors pushed back, the more the public wanted in. The controversy paid off. The Outlaw became a must-see scandal, and Jane Russell, barely out of her teens, was an overnight sensation. Critics called it trash. Moralists called it indecent, and audiences couldn't get enough. In the end, Hughes outplayed the system, proving that sometimes all you need for box office gold is a headline and a whole lot of nerve. Was it a great Western? That's debatable. But as a masterclass in stirring up controversy, The Outlaw was pure Hollywood dynamite. Song of the South, 1946. Say the name Song of the South today, and you'll get one of two reactions: nostalgia, or a sharp intake of breath. In 1946, Disney dropped what it hoped would be a family-friendly musical fantasy. Instead, it ignited a controversy that's still raging nearly 80 years later. Set in the post-Civil War South, the film mixed live action with animation, memorable songs, and the avuncular charm of Uncle Remus. But beneath the Technicolor gloss, critics saw something else: a sugar-coated, deeply problematic take on America's racist past. From the moment it hit screens, civil rights groups were up in arms, accusing Disney of romanticizing plantation life and reducing black characters to one-dimensional stereotypes. The NAACP condemned it for its idyllic master-slave relationship, while even some early reviewers squirmed at the folksy, just-so wisdom being peddled to children. The studio, blindsided, tried to spin the film as a harmless fairy tale, but the damage was done. As the protests grew louder, Disney pulled the film from circulation in the United States, making it one of the company's most notorious vault dwellers. The music, especially Zip-a-Dee-Doo-Dah, outlived the film, winning an Oscar and embedding itself in pop culture. But the movie itself became a ghost, discussed, debated, and almost impossible to see. Every few years, there's fresh outrage over its legacy, whether it's theme park rides or rumors of a re-release. What's undeniable is that Song of the South didn't just spark a national conversation about race in Hollywood. It forced the world's happiest studio to reckon with the darkest corners of its own history. Was it magical or just misguided? That's a debate that won't be settled anytime soon. Gentleman's Agreement, 1947. Imagine walking into a Hollywood theater in 1947 and seeing a major star expose the dark underbelly of polite American society. That's exactly what Gentleman's Agreement did, and the fallout was immediate and intense. Gregory Peck stars as a journalist who pretends to be Jewish to write an exposé on anti-Semitism, an assignment that lands him in a maze of prejudice, casual slurs, and invisible walls. It was an issue everyone knew about, but few in the mainstream dared to name. Hollywood's bigwigs were nervous. Studios shied away from anything that could be labeled as too political, especially at a time when the industry was already under suspicion during the early Red Scare. Yet producer Darryl F. Zanuck, who wasn't even Jewish, bulldozed ahead. The movie didn't just call out overt bigotry. It went after the soft, insidious kind. The kind that hid in cocktail parties, country clubs, and job interviews. And that hit uncomfortably close to home for many in the audience. The backlash was swift. Some theaters refused to show the film, and there were even reports of threats against Zanuck. Various community leaders accused the movie of stirring up trouble where there wasn't any. But others hailed it as courageous and overdue. Gentleman's Agreement didn't just win the Oscar for Best Picture. It forced a national conversation about who got to belong in America's post-war dream. Looking back, it's clear the film rattled cages because it told the truth and made people see themselves in the mirror, for better or worse. Is it subtle by today's standards? Maybe not. But for 1947, it was an atom bomb dropped in the middle of a dinner party, and Hollywood would never be able to quietly close the door on bigotry again. Forever, Amber 1947. You want scandal? Forever Amber was practically manufactured for it. Take a bodice-ripping bestseller about sex, sin, and social climbing in Restoration England. Toss in a Hollywood studio desperate for a hit, and what do you get? A movie so racy that it nearly broke the production code's back. When 20th Century Fox greenlit this adaptation, they were betting big and risking even bigger. The Hays Office, Hollywood's self-appointed morality police, hated everything about Amber Street. Claire, the film's cunning heroine who seduces, schemes, and climbs her way through a decadent London. Censors wrung their hands over the non-stop parade of affairs, out-of-wedlock pregnancies, and, gasp, women enjoying sex for pleasure. Early test screenings triggered walkouts. Religious groups demanded bans. Pulpit thundering reached a fever pitch, and even the Catholic Legion of Decency gave it their dreaded, condemned rating. The controversy didn't stop there. Star Linda Darnell was hyped as the next big thing, but the press had a field day with tales of rewrites, reshoots, and even a fired lead actress. For many, Forever Amber became less about the story and more about the battle between old-world morality and the new, unapologetic boldness that was starting to bubble up in post-war America. Did the movie deliver on its scandalous promise? For 1947, absolutely. Critics dismissed it as salacious fluff, but audiences showed up in droves, eager to see what all the fuss was about. Fox made a mint, and the film's legacy endures as a prime example of what happens when Hollywood tries to bottle forbidden fruit, and censors only end up fanning the flames. The Miracle of Morgan's Creek, 1944. It's hard to believe a screwball comedy could trigger a censorship meltdown, but The Miracle of Morgan's Creek did just that. Released in 1944, in the middle of World War II, this film didn't feature a single gun battle or explicit scene, yet it was branded dangerous by every self-respecting moralist. Why? Because it dared to joke about the ultimate American taboo: unwed pregnancy. The setup is pure Preston Sturges mischief. A small-town girl, played by the brilliant Betty Hutton, attends a raucous farewell party for soldiers, wakes up hungover, and realizes she might have gotten married to a mystery man whose name she can't remember. Oh, and she's pregnant. In an era when the word pregnancy was barely allowed on screen, Sturges spun a riotous farce that somehow slipped through the censors, but not without a vicious fight. The Hays Office lost their minds over the script, insisting on rewrite after rewrite. Paramount executives panicked, convinced the film would be banned outright or spark riots in small towns across America. Local church groups howled with outrage, denouncing the movie as unfit for family viewing and calling for boycotts. Sturgis, meanwhile, played the censors like a fiddle, delivering his punchlines with a wink and making audiences laugh at the very thing the moral guardians feared most. Despite, or because of, the uproar, The Miracle of Morgan's Creek became a hit. Critics praised its sharp wit and gutsy sense of fun, while audiences delighted in seeing Hollywood thumb its nose at puritanical double standards. The real miracle: that Sturgis managed to get this wild, subversive, and surprisingly sweet comedy past the censors at all. Talk about a miracle on Main Street. Duel in the Sun, 1946. If there was ever a movie tailor-made to scandalize America's post-war sensibilities, it was Duel in the Sun. Nicknamed Lust in the Dust by critics and killjoys alike, this David O. Selznick Western was an unholy cocktail of sex, violence, and feverish melodrama. Jennifer Jones stars as Pearl Chavez, a half-breed femme fatale who's torn between two men, one pure-hearted, the other pure trouble. By 1940s standards, the whole setup was a powder keg. The Production Code Administration nearly had a coronary. Between the torrid love scenes, racial innuendo, and Pearl's unapologetic sexuality, the censors threw up roadblock after roadblock. Selznick, never one to back down, kept pushing, even going so far as to stage new, steamier scenes just to taunt the moral guardians. The Catholic Legion of Decency, predictably, slapped the film with a C for condemned, the cinematic equivalent of being excommunicated. The reaction was as wild as the Texas plains. Some cities banned the film outright, and others demanded heavy edits. Conservative critics dubbed it a national disgrace, but audiences, always hungry for forbidden fruit, flocked to theaters. The marketing only stoked the fire, promising the most passionate picture ever made, and trading in barely disguised innuendo. Looking back, Duel in the Sun was less about the Old West and more about New Hollywood, one that was tired of hiding behind lace curtains. Did it cross a line? Maybe. But it also tore down barriers, proving that moviegoers were ready for stories that didn't play nice. And sometimes a little outrage is the best ticket in town. Freaks, 1940s. Re-release. Some movies are born controversial. Others get their reputation the hard way. Freaks is the ultimate example. Originally released in 1932 and banned or butchered almost everywhere, Todd Browning's infamous sideshow horror film got a fresh wave of outrage when it was re-released in the 1940s. Suddenly, a whole new generation of viewers was confronted with a spectacle they'd never seen or even imagined before. Browning cast real circus performers with disabilities, refusing to sugarcoat or sanitize their world. For 1940s audiences, this wasn't just shocking, it was taboo. Critics and censors alike called the film exploitative, grotesque, and unfit for public consumption. Many theaters refused to show it at all, while those that did often tacked on warnings to the faint of heart. Moralists condemned it as a perverse curiosity, and some cities even passed local ordinances banning its exhibition. But here's the twist. Freaks slowly developed a cult following among artists, intellectuals, and anyone drawn to the darker corners of human experience. It became a rallying cry for outsiders, celebrated for its empathy and its daring refusal to look away from difference. Of course, the controversy only made it more alluring. Audiences snuck in just to see what all the whispers were about. Today, Freaks stands as one of the most discussed, dissected, and debated films ever made. In the 1940s, it was the ultimate forbidden movie, proof that the most unsettling stories are often the ones that refuse to play by anyone else's rules. The Lost Weekend, 1945. In 1945, Billy Wilder unleashed The Lost Weekend on an America that wanted to forget its troubles and escape into celluloid dreams. Instead, audiences got a harrowing, unflinching portrait of alcoholism that yanked the rug out from under the glossy Hollywood illusion. Ray Milland stars as Don Burnham, a would-be writer spiraling through 4 days of blackout drinking, hallucinations, and self-destruction. The film's honesty was brutal, so brutal that liquor industry lobbyists tried to have it buried before a single audience ever saw it. This was a time when Hollywood's unwritten rules said addiction was a private shame, something you hinted at, but never showed. The Lost Weekend smashed that silence. Its depiction of withdrawal, delirium tremens, and the social cost of addiction was so raw that theater owners feared backlash. The liquor industry, terrified of a public relations nightmare, pressured Paramount to scrap the project and even tried to buy the negative outright. But Wilder and Milland wouldn't be silenced. The film opened to critical acclaim and howls of protest. Temperance groups cheered, but others accused Wilder of dragging America's dirty laundry onto the silver screen. The sight of Milland sweating, begging, and hallucinating bats was burned into viewers' memories, and the film's ending offered only a tentative hope, not the easy cure audiences expected. The Lost Weekend didn't just win Oscars, it started a conversation. It forced Hollywood to confront the realities it had long pretended didn't exist, showing that sometimes the real danger is in what we refuse to face. If controversy is about shattering illusions, then The Lost Weekend was a Molotov cocktail through Hollywood's front window. Scarlet Street, 1945. Leave it to director Fritz Lang to unleash a film so dark, so bleak, and so morally corrosive that some cities banned it outright. Scarlet Street is a noir nightmare where good intentions go to die, and nobody gets out clean. Edward G. Robinson stars as Christopher Cross, a meek, married man drawn into a web of deceit by a femme fatale played by Joan Bennett. What starts as a harmless infatuation spirals into theft, exploitation, and murder. In 1945, this was the stuff of scandal. The censors balked at the film's unflinching portrayal of adultery, blackmail, and the total lack of a happy ending. Unlike most movies of its time, Scarlet Street refused to offer redemption or even justice. Evil goes unpunished, and the hero is left broken and ruined. The production code office demanded cuts, but Lang stood his ground, refusing to soften the film's grim edge. The result? Outrage in spades. The movie was banned in several U.S. cities, including Milwaukee, New York, and Atlanta. Religious leaders called it an assault on decency. Newspaper columnists worried it would inspire a wave of immorality. Even film critics were split. Some hailed it as a masterpiece. Others recoiled from its darkness. What's clear is that Scarlet Street left a mark. It proved that cinema could be more than just escapism. It could be a dangerous mirror, showing us things we'd rather not see. For the 1940s, that was about as controversial as it got. And, true to noir tradition, there are no easy answers. Just a lingering sense of doom, and the uncomfortable feeling that sometimes evil wins. The Blue Dahlia, 1946. If you want a film that rattled Hollywood from the inside out, The Blue Dahlia fits the bill. Written by the infamous Raymond Chandler, no stranger to controversy himself, this post-war noir delivered a heady mix of murder, betrayal, and simmering paranoia. Alan Ladd stars as a returning Navy vet who finds his wife unfaithful, then gets caught up in a whodunit when she turns up dead. The film's taut script and shadowy atmosphere were enough to draw attention, but what really made waves was the behind-the-scenes battle with the censors. At the heart of the storm was Chandler's original ending, which pointed the finger at a sympathetic character with a head injury, an idea that sent the Navy Department and Production Code Office into a panic. They insisted that no returning veteran could ever be depicted as a murderer, especially with so many real-life soldiers coming home from war. The ending was rewritten under intense pressure, and Chandler himself blasted the interference, calling it Hollywood hypocrisy at its worst. But controversy still clung to The Blue Dahlia. The film's frank portrayal of infidelity, PTSD, and post-war disillusionment, was more than a little uncomfortable for audiences used to simple good versus evil stories. Critics and moral watchdogs argued over whether it was appropriate for a mainstream audience, while the film's gritty realism inspired whispers that Hollywood was finally ready to tackle the darker side of the American dream. The Blue Dahlia was a hit at the box office, but its legacy is inseparable from the battles it fought just to make it to the screen. In the end, the controversy made the story even sharper, reminding us that sometimes the deadliest secrets are the ones nobody wants to talk about. Gilda, 1946. When Rita Hayworth sauntered onto the screen in Gilda, a generation of censors nearly fainted on the spot. Hollywood's answer to the femme fatale, Hayworth's performance didn't just raise eyebrows, it practically set the screen on fire. Wrapped in a slinky black dress and armed with a knowing smile, Gilda was a woman who refused to play by anyone's rules, least of all the Hays Codes. It wasn't just the smoldering striptease or the whispered innuendo. Gilda was controversial because it dared to make its leading lady sexually assertive, complex, and impossible to control. The censors scrambled, demanding reshoots, edits, and a more moral ending. But director Charles Vitor and Hayworth pushed back. The tension bled into the finished film, giving Gilda a sense of danger and unpredictability that thrilled and scandalized audiences. But not everyone was buying a ticket just for the fireworks. Religious watchdogs and self-appointed decency leagues accused the film of corrupting youth and promoting deviant behavior. In several countries, Gilda was either heavily censored or outright banned. The rumors about Hayworth's real-life exploits only fueled the fire, making the movie a lightning rod for gossip and speculation. Yet, controversy only increased its allure. Hayworth became an icon, Gilda became a legend, and Hollywood learned that a little scandal could go a long way at the box office. Today, Gilda is remembered not just for its sensuality, but for the way it shattered the safe, sanitized image of the 1940s leading lady. Sometimes, the most dangerous woman in the room is the one who knows exactly what she wants. Notorious, 1946. Alfred Hitchcock was no stranger to stirring the pot, but Notorious was the film that truly pushed Hollywood's comfort zone in the 1940s. Set in the shadowy world of post-war espionage, the movie starred Ingrid Bergman as a fallen woman turned spy, and Cary Grant as her morally murky handler. Their mission: infiltrate a Nazi ring in Brazil. The chemistry between Bergman and Grant was electric, so much so that it had the censors scrambling for smelling salts. The main scandal? A steamy, uninterrupted on-screen kiss that shattered the production code's infamous 3-second rule. Hitchcock, ever the trickster, orchestrated a scene where Bergman and Grant nuzzled, whispered, and kissed repeatedly for nearly 3 minutes by cleverly interspersing dialogue, sidestepping the letter of the law while completely subverting its spirit. The result? One of the most sensually charged moments in classic cinema. But the controversy didn't stop with kisses. Notorious touched on themes of sexual manipulation, blurred morality, and the expendability of women in the world of spies and statesmen. Church groups denounced the film's loose morals, and critics howled about its subversive undertones. There was also backlash against Bergman herself. Her role as a woman who slept with the enemy, not for love, but for duty, was more than a little shocking in an era obsessed with female virtue. Despite the uproar, or maybe because of it, Notorious became a smash hit. Hitchcock's sly defiance of the rules set a new bar for suspense, romance, and pushing boundaries. In the end, the real secret was how controversy made the film unforgettable and kept audiences coming back for more. Crossfire, 1947. Few films dared to tackle the ugliness of prejudice as head-on as Crossfire, and the backlash was both fierce and immediate. Released in 1947, this hard-boiled film noir turned the murder mystery formula on its head, making the motive not money, jealousy, or passion, but bigotry itself. In the film, a Jewish man is murdered by a soldier not because of a personal feud, but simply because of his religion. For post-war Hollywood, which typically preferred its villains with black hats, not hateful hearts, this was a slap in the face to the status quo. Crossfire is as American as it gets, produced by RKO, starring Robert Young, Robert Mitchum, and Robert Ryan, and based on a novel about homophobia changed to anti-Semitism to avoid censorship. Director Edward Dmytryk and producer Adrian Scott, both later blacklisted in the Red Scare, took a bold stand in an industry terrified of controversy. The movie's depiction of hate-motivated violence and the complicity of bystanders was incendiary, provoking fierce resistance from studio heads, advertisers, and segments of the audience who saw their own prejudices reflected uncomfortably on screen. Civic groups and the Catholic Legion of Decency denounced the film as divisive, with some regions attempting to block screenings outright. Others praised its courage, and Crossfire became a lightning rod for debate in the press and in movie houses. It was nominated for 5 Academy Awards, but the real legacy is its refusal to look away from the dark realities beneath the American dream. By forcing audiences to confront bigotry in their own neighborhoods, Crossfire proved that Hollywood controversy could be more than scandal. It could be social awakening too. Johnny Belinda, 1948. When Johnny Belinda hit theaters in 1948, it shattered Hollywood's last great taboo, sexual assault. Starring Jane Wyman in an Oscar-winning role as a deaf-mute woman living in a small Nova Scotia town, the film doesn't just flirt with controversy, it charges straight at it. The story revolves around Belinda, who is raped by a local man and gives birth to a child, setting off a chain reaction of gossip, cruelty, and violence in her close-knit community. For the 1940s, the very idea of showing rape, even implied on screen, was enough to send the censors into panic mode. The production code explicitly forbade depictions or even direct references to sexual assault, and for years, studios wouldn't touch the topic. But producer Jerry Wald and director Gene Negulesco weren't backing down. They fought for a script that honored the real pain and silence surrounding such crimes, refusing to sugarcoat the trauma or turn it into melodrama. Predictably, Johnny Belinda became a lightning rod. Religious groups and moral crusaders denounced the film, calling it indecent and unfit for decent audiences. Some theaters refused to show it. Others cut the most contentious scenes. But for all the outrage, audiences responded with empathy, and the film became a surprise, critical, and commercial hit. Jane Wyman's sensitive, unsentimental performance won praise from all corners, forcing the public to confront issues Hollywood had long kept in the shadows. Looking back, Johnny Belinda stands out not just for its bravery, but for its refusal to treat trauma as a dirty secret. It didn't just court controversy, it demanded a conversation. And for once, Hollywood listened. The Snake Pit, 1948. For 1940s, Hollywood mental illness was the final frontier, a subject so wrapped in shame and ignorance that the production code barely let filmmakers whisper its name. Then, The Snake Pit came along, ripped the lid off, and left audiences rattled. Olivia de Havilland stars as Virginia Cunningham, a woman confined to a state mental hospital after a nervous breakdown. What followed was a cinematic journey into the real-life horrors of institutionalization, a topic no studio had dared touch so directly. Director Anatol Litvak pulled no punches. The Snake Pit was filmed in real psychiatric wards, featuring unvarnished depictions of overcrowding, outdated treatments, and staff who ranged from compassionate to outright cruel. Critics hailed it as a breakthrough, but some doctors and mental health officials were appalled by its portrayal of electroshock therapy, restraints, and the eponymous Snake Pit, a chaotic room where the most troubled patients were left to fend for themselves. Reformers used the movie as a rallying cry, demanding better conditions and new laws. But not everyone was ready for Hollywood to air the system's dirty laundry. Medical associations called for boycotts, and some politicians accused the filmmakers of inciting hysteria. Audiences, meanwhile, were both shocked and mesmerized, often leaving theaters shaken or in tears. The Snake Pit didn't just create a stir, it moved the needle. It inspired a wave of reforms in mental health care and forced a national conversation about the treatment of the vulnerable. For all the noise it made, the film's real legacy is the empathy it stirred, and the reminder that sometimes controversy is the only way to make people pay attention to what's been hidden for too long. So, was the Golden Age really so golden, or just glittering with controversy nobody wanted to admit? These films didn't just test the censors. They broke the rules and forced entire generations to reckon with what was acceptable, honest, or even speakable. Which of these 1940s shockers surprised you the most? Are there others that deserve a spot on the list? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit subscribe for more real Hollywood history. And remember, sometimes the most explosive stories are hiding in plain sight.